Welcome to the NICU Today Podcast, a podcast to give families a new point of support as they navigate the NICU journey. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to subscribe wherever you enjoy your podcast and share this episode with anyone who might find it helpful. Welcome to the NICU Today Podcast. We're glad you're with us today. Our guest today is Dr. Kristin Meyer. She is a passionate advocate and leader in special education, focusing on empowering parents to navigate the complex special education process. With a doctorate in educational leadership from Immaculata University, where her dissertation emphasized the role of educational advocates, Dr. Meyer co-founded the Reach Group, an advocacy firm dedicated to helping parents in both public and private school settings to ensure their children's educational needs are effectively met. Dr. Meyer's background includes an MA in educational leadership, a supervisor of special education certification, and over 15 years of classroom experience teaching children with autism and emotional disturbance. Her professional experience spans roles such as educational advocate at the Arc of Chester County and upper school program supervisor at Valley Forge Educational Services Vanguard School. In these positions, she played a vital role in developing educational programs, leading staff, and ensuring compliance with educational standards. In addition to this advocacy work, Dr. Meyer has served as an adjunct professor at Immaculata University, teaching advanced procedures in special education and IEP development. She has also worked directly with students with emotional and learning disabilities at Haverford High School and as a private teacher for children with special needs. Beyond her professional work, Dr. Meyer's commitment to supporting individuals with disabilities extends to her volunteer efforts at Thorncroft Therapeutic Equestrian Farm, where she has organized major fundraising events and participated in lessons programs. With her extensive experience and dedication, Dr. Meyer continues to be a leading advocate for empowering parents and promoting positive educational outcomes for students with special needs. We are going to have a great conversation today, Dr. Meyer.
So happy to be here, Martha. I'm very excited.
Yes. Well, I shared a lot about your background in that introduction, but I think it's so important. And what I love seeing is how much you have been helping families and students for so many years, kids for so many years. So I shared a lot about this, but what led you into this career path?
You know, hearing it, I'm kind of choked up because it just reiterates my why and the passion I've been on. I got into education in a very roundabout way. Growing up, wanted to be a teacher, but I had a really amazing mom who was a corporate person, and she ran her own business and really inspired me to go to corporate. But I trained sales consultants, and training sales consultants is like herding cats. And so I went back to school, got my elementary certification. And the first time I worked with our special needs population was at a therapeutic horse farm. And I had no desire to be there. Selfishly, I was there for the horses. And this little boy with CP, cerebral palsy, was crying. And it was his best day. We put that little boy on a horse, and he smelled like pancakes, and he had curly blonde hair. And my life changed. After that, I never went into the regular ed classroom. I was a homebound instructor. I got my special ed certification. And that really was the moment that said, this is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And so over the years, working with the populations that I did, I really saw what the students struggled with, but I also saw what the parents were struggling with. And I always found myself advocating on the side, always calling parents and saying, this is what's going on in the classroom. This is what your child's sharing with me. This is what's going to happen in the IEP meeting. My boss is going to say no. So this is what you need to say to get them to say yes. And I got myself in hot water, totally worth it. And as I finished my career in the classroom, I transitioned into program supervisor, principal for an approved private school for children with autism and emotional disturbance. And we all survived COVID. And that was when I was a principal. And that's when I really saw firsthand what parents didn't know. And what they needed to know, what they had the right to know. But I could only do so much on the behind the scenes, but it was enough to say, this is my next step in my career and where I need to go. So my whole dissertation is about empowering parents in the special education world and really building those relationships of collaboration. So I'm here. I love it. It's my big why in life. I've lived the struggles with my students as the teacher, as the principal, and I just can relate with families in their day-to-days. So I love my job. It's amazing. And there's nowhere else I can go at this point, because once you're an advocate, you never go back to a classroom.
Well, I have to tell you, we've only known each other not too long, and I already get that feeling. We've talked so much in past events that we've been at, and I definitely want to talk about the school experience. I mean, we're living it right now with our no, she is a teenager, but I want to go back. So we talk to NICU families, we help NICU
Mhm.
families. We talk a lot about early intervention and
Yes,
early intervention coming in early on after you leave the NICU. But then there is this transition potentially to the intermediate unit. So, can we start there and then kind of get into the school age world? Tell us a little bit about the difference between early intervention and the intermediate unit, and any advice you have for families that are trying to navigate those two things.
absolutely. So I want to explain that the intermediate unit and early intervention go hand in hand. So when you have a child who is a NICU baby, has any kind of developmental delays that you're seeing, you want to reach out to your intermediate unit. The intermediate unit is the first place all families should start when seeking support for their children with developmental delays or any concerns for that matter. The programs begin at birth with the Birth to 3 program. And as the child in that time, the intermediate unit will help identify if services are needed, such as OT, occupational therapy, PT, physical therapy. Is there a speech and language delay? And that's where they're going to get you started. And then from there, when the child comes upon the age of 3, that's when the IU will help you transition them to the preschool early intervention program, which serves children from ages 3 to 5. When the child's ready to enter school, kindergarten, the IU will support the transition from the early intervention program into the kindergarten program. And what that will look like for each child will really vary. So they may go into the typical regular ed classroom with some supports, or they may need more intensive supports and have to go into a special education classroom. But the intermediate unit, your intermediate unit, is your first line of defense and options to really help your children succeed. And what you want to remember is that children can be evaluated and reevaluated at any time throughout this 0 to 5 years. And some children will hit their milestones, which will allow them to be exited from the program. So there are so many different variables, but the IU provides the most comprehensive support throughout the early stages, ensuring that every child has and receives the necessary supports to thrive. And I want to say to parents that when you are navigating this, it's scary, but don't be embarrassed or worried. Call your IU. They have so many great resources to support your children.
So the IU, because we talk about early interventions, but the
Mhm.
IU can connect you to the early intervention team to
Yes,
come out and evaluate your child.
exactly. So they are the parent. An intermediate unit is the parent to every school district. So if you think of the umbrella, they're that one little piece of the umbrella that holds us all together. Intermediate units service their counties. So I'm in Chester County. Our Chester County Intermediate Unit hosts all of the high schools, all of the middle schools, all of the elementary schools in Chester County. They also are the parent to all of our service providers. So when I have a need, I go to the intermediate unit.
Mhm.
And so the same thing, if you're Montgomery County, Delaware County, Berks, any county throughout the state has an intermediate unit, and that's your first line to get in touch with all of these service providers.
And I'll say for those that are currently traveling the NICU, talk to your medical team at the hospital. They will be
Absolutely.
able to provide the number for you to get that process started. We always encourage it early on to get the evaluation set up to come out. And then there are some, so I only know our personal experience, obviously,
Mhm.
but with our daughter, we were in and out of early intervention her first 3 years. She did well. I started to notice things. I called back. They came back out and evaluated her. She had play therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy the most in her first 3 years, being a 23-weeker who had some gross motor challenges. So we were in and out of early intervention. When we left the early intervention in Montgomery County here at 3, she personally didn't qualify for services through the IU
Mhm.
based upon their criteria that we had. So I think that's important that you said that. Kids may hit certain milestones. While she still struggled, we ended up, while we didn't qualify through IU, we ended up getting her enrolled with physical therapy through an outpatient center. We used TheraPlay at the time here in Montgomery County. There's IV rehab, all different places to check
Right.
into depending, where you're located, and many of them take insurance. So we were able to get her into that outpatient, which is important.
It's so important because even if you don't qualify via the districts or the IUs, having that continual therapies and supports is so crucial for this age range. And yes, many of these places take insurance, but if you haven't done your medical assistance, make sure you have all of your documents in a row. And that's kind of where an advocate can come into play as well, as to explain the whole process and what documentations you need, because there are a lot of resources. If you don't have insurance, there are a lot of resources available and community outreach programs that will support you and your child, because a gap in services can really impact our kiddos, especially if with the developmental delay piece of it. So we don't ever want a gap in services. We really want a continuation to ensure that they get to the developmental milestones that they need.
And when we talk about developmental delays, I know many of us think about physical delays, right?
Mhm.
But can a delay impact social and emotional behaviors as well?
Absolutely. And so, because my career specifically is middle school, high school transition, I've dealt with the older kids who have been our NICU babies or our developmental delay babies. And what I'm about to share is applicable to all ages, but developmental delays in children will start presenting very young in the understanding social cues. And that will make it hard for them to engage with peers. And they might have difficulty with communication, which could then also limit their friendships and leading to feeling of isolation. So the social emotional piece is interactions, emotional regulation. What we see in our kiddos is a typical tantrum, or if you see a larger tantrum, the difficulty managing emotions, the meltdowns, especially when they're struggling to express how they feel. That's areas in which the social emotional piece is played into with a developmental delay. Children with differing delays and depending on where they are, will have challenges seeing perspective. They'll have a hard time understanding and responding to others' emotions. So, for example, on the playground, if a child goes up to, I have a 7-year-old, so if she had the developmental delay, an example would be if a friend came to her and said, "Hey, Scarlett, my dog passed away." And her response is, "Well, that stinks. I missed dinner." That's a sign that she's not associating or empathizing with the other child and their needs. And it's little things like that that you should be aware of as a parent in these earlier years. How your child is responding in communication can really show you where they are in their development of social and emotional tolerance and understanding.
That's really great feedback. And then how does that translate into the school setting where parents what kind of signs should parents be looking for academically that their students might need some intervention?
So I'm going to start with one important thing with that. And I see it with typical students as well when they're struggling with anxiety or depression, which unfortunately is starting to present in our younger children. When our kiddos start talking about physical complaints, frequent headaches, stomach aches, school avoidance of, I don't want to stay home today, my tummy hurts, those are underlying signs that they might be having some delays in that emotional understanding. But it also might be signs that there are other pieces to the puzzle going on, which could result in the behaviors, which could also result in withdrawal. So if you have a younger kiddo who's typically very social, but as they're getting older in the classrooms, they're starting to withdraw from their peers, and you're seeing frustration and anger, that is where you'll see it in the educational setting. And that's where teachers become such an integral part of our teams, that we want to say to them, hey, I'm seeing this at home. Are you seeing the same thing in the classroom? And that's where it will present academically. So for our younger kiddos, with and without developmental delays, math is typically our biggest struggle. I still hate math as a teacher. And I had to teach math and I hated teaching math, but at least I could tell my kiddos I hated math as much as they did.
Right.
But you know, when I say I hate math versus a student who's struggling, we really want to investigate more and sit down with them and say, okay, is there something happening in class? Is there a friend? Do you get what's happening? And what parents need to realize is the audio piece of our communication is a huge component. So, you know, as a parent, we want to get our regular eye checks. We want to get our hearing checks, our physicals every year, because that'll keep you abreast of where they are developmentally with their physical and their milestones. And that will also be really important information for the overall classroom experience. Mm-hmm. So seeing the behaviors or seeing different things in class will pinpoint down to the physical piece of it as well.
So you shared some general signs to look for. Is there a difference between boys and girls?
Yes, as there should be. There are many similar signs that we'll observe between boys and girls. You know, in our younger girls, we'll see some of those behaviors. We'll see some of the outbursts. We'll see just externalizing extra emotions. So again, my 7-year-old, she'll come home and have a meltdown, and it's, okay, what is happening? You were so happy 5 minutes ago. Well, once we boil it down, there's an issue at school, whether it's a friend thing or a school thing. So with boys, we'll see more of boys acting out, and this is for all the ages. So whether you see something in the elementary years or not, be aware, middle school, high school, you'll start seeing more of the acting out, disruptive behavior. I have one kiddo, he's amazing, but he has such impulse control. And he was a developmentally delayed little boy, and impulse control was always an issue, but he had older siblings. So as parents, they didn't see that the other siblings could have really impacted as well. So keep in mind, if you have siblings at home, try and isolate a little bit more to see how some of these behaviors are acting out. But with boys, we're going to see more acting out, attention and hyperactivity, externalizing emotions where they get really frustrated, where they have more anger outbursts, where they're defiant, where they just ignore. Whereas as our young ladies get older, our little girls get older, what to be aware of, and I say this to moms especially, you know, the puberty piece plays in for middle school, and our girls are really good at that quiet struggle, internalizing everything, becoming more withdrawn. If they're a Swiftie like I am and my daughter, and all of a sudden they're not worried if they're Travis and Taylor are engaged yet, okay, that might be a red flag. But things like that, when they start to withdraw from even your mother-daughter relationship in a way that's a little more extreme, because girls will withdraw, they will try and identify themselves as individuals, but as they are growing, that internalization becomes more. perfectionism, where girls start pushing themselves to be harder, to meet higher expectations. That's because they might be covering more on the inside of where they're struggling. That self-doubt and anxiety comes into play. Again, this starts presenting at 5th and 6th grade, which it sounds so young, Martha, compared to where we were. I mean, I was joking around with a friend the other day that we were latchkey kids. My brother was 9 and I was 6 and we got left at home, and that was normal. We can't leave our kids at home anymore. That's not the normal. But when we see our 5th, 6th graders really hyper-focused on other girls, or more concerned about what's going around them, and they're not invited to a party.
Right.
They're focusing more on the social than they are the academic, but that is also a task avoidance. So that could also be saying that we have some learning deficits that are coming into play now that might not have been identified. So in those elementary years, and stop me if I'm just overspanning. But,
no, this is great.
Like 1st through 4th grade, all of our kiddos are kind of on that same path. We have a similar math, reading progression, but you're going to start to see dips around that 5th grade. So if you're starting to see your young daughter withdrawing, or she used to love math and now she's like, I don't really want to do my math. Oh, my tummy hurts. Let's then say to the school, what are you seeing in her academic performances? And the same can go for boys. I might be a little bit biased because I do have a daughter, but the same for boys. When any kind of decline in grades or progression in learning starts to happen, that's a red flag. Period. End of story. Don't let your teacher say, well, they had a bad day. It's a continual progression. So if they're continually not progressing, or they're just making little growth, that 1% is not enough for me as a professional, for a child with an IEP to say they're making progress. We need to see large progress, especially in that 1 through 5 academic elementary years. So that's something parents also want to be aware of. When your child has an IEP, look at those progress reports and ask the questions like, what are we doing here? They're not making that much progress in this goal. Well, the goal might not be appropriate, but there might be other things going on, or maybe a different reading approach needs to happen, or maybe direct instruction needs to happen in math. So always look for forward growth and have expectations in your IEP that the data baseline is a true baseline and achievable growth development forward goals are established.
Well, and that's really being a part of the care team. So I would say there's one
Yes.
conversation around those who have IEPs. I know for us, it took us a long time to get an IEP but first step, talk to the teacher. If you start to see things at home, reach out to your child's teacher, talk to them, and then you can certainly elevate it from there to the school counselor, to the case managers at the school. Have your child evaluated. You can always ask for an evaluation of whether they need some alternative learning accommodations.
Right. And I will say, when you reach out and if you find that you're at that evaluation point, really be clear in what your concerns are. Many of our families will go to the teacher and say, I have concerns about Scarlett. Okay, what are your concerns? We have to be proactive. You can't assume the teacher knows. They have a classroom of 25 students. They're trying to manage every student. So if my concern with Scarlett is now that she's withdrawing and she's not engaged with her bestie and she's not really doing her art anymore, that's the information I'm sharing with the teacher. And I simply say to the teacher, I'm seeing this at home, and list out what you're seeing. You're being proactive, because then the teacher in turn will say, oh, I have noticed that, or maybe they haven't, but at least you're giving them tangible information that's transferable to the classroom. And when you ask for a formal evaluation, you really want to list out what your concerns are. You may have already been to the pediatrician. You want to share that historical piece of they were in an early intervention program. they were no longer qualified. We like to revisit that because now we're seeing, as they are getting older, more concerns are starting to present themselves.
Mm-hmm. And that translates, great segue into the next piece of the conversation I want to have with you, being an active part of the team taking care of your child in school. We're going through this now. We've gone through it the past couple of years. We work really closely with Claire's case manager, her emotional support teacher, her teachers. Can you be too proactive as a parent? And how do you put yourself in there to be an active part of the care team?
You can't be too proactive. What I coach all of my families on, and what we say, and what I garnered from being a teacher, and this is so important, whether your child has an IEP or not, the beginning of the year, you reach out and establish communication with your team, whether you're elementary and it's just one classroom teacher and one counselor, or if you're at the middle school, high school, where you have a team of 50, which I don't want to scare anybody. It doesn't get to 50, but I have sat at tables where it's been 25 and it's like, why do we have all these people? But either way, that first week of school, after I keep going using Scarlett, but after Scarlett gets into her first week of school, I email the teacher and the counselor and I introduce my daughter. I say, Scarlett is an only child. Her grandparents live down the street. They're heavily involved, too much involved. I have a doctorate. My mom tells me how to teach my daughter, and let me tell you, that's a lot. But I say, my grandparents are involved. Scarlett has a cat. Scarlett loves to read. She likes art. She gets frustrated when, and I share a quick, here's my daughter in a nutshell, because that saves a teacher so much time in trying to navigate and learn that. And as a former teacher, we always would give our students questionnaires. Tell me about your life. And I would take 25 of those home and I'd be exhausted. And I'd try and say, okay, Sally, Johnny, everybody, here's everything they like. I can't keep all of that in my mind. But as a parent being proactive, you've done two things. You've not only introduced your child, but you've established positive communication. You've established your proper email address. And you're opening it up to say, I'm here to work with you. And I want to be a part of this team. So every time you have a change in staff or teachers, introduce your child. It takes you like 5 seconds because you know them. Introduce your kiddo. And you can never be proactive. Parents hesitate about being the squeaky wheel. I have no problem sending an email because I've established a friendly relationship with my team at school. And it's not a squeaky wheel anymore. It's communication. It's regular communication. Hey, Scarlett had a really rough weekend. Expect her to be tired, maybe withdrawn. Or for all of our really busy moms and dads who travel, we travel a lot with business. I emailed the team to say, we're going to be away. Expect X, Y, and Z. Here's the contact. Can you ask her questions? That's not being a squeaky wheel. That's being a proactive parent.
Mm-hmm. Love that. I have one more question for you. Is it ever too late to have an evaluation done for your child?
Yes and no. I have had families come to me senior year with an evaluation and it's a little too late. It still works, but it's a little too late because if you're working with a child that's just been diagnosed senior year, we've got a whole plethora of problems behind us that the district or the IU has failed to identify. So don't wait. If you see or have concerns, again, list them out, make it clear what you need, and ask for that evaluation. You can have your child. Your typical child can be evaluated, and depending on the category of which they fall under, there's 13 categories in this that are recognized by the state of disabilities. If your child falls within one of those categories, they are typically reevaluated every 3 years. However, we have a major life moment and we are seeing some major issues. You can ask for a reevaluation after 2. For our children with intellectual disabilities and autism, they are automatically reevaluated every 2 years. Those dates are so important So have your child evaluated if you have concerns. It could end up with a 504, you could end up with an IEP, or you could end up with nothing. But typically, if you have a valid enough concern, I would anticipate a 504 would be the first step. But don't wait until senior year. Really identify sophomore, junior year. If you have concerns, get them evaluated. Because although an IEP and a 504, the whole document do not follow you to a college, follow a child to a college, a university and college, if that's their choice in life, do provide accommodations.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on your child and what they want to do, we have a lot of amazing autism and intellectually disabled kiddos that do go to colleges because they have the programs available. Just keep letting your kids dream their dreams. You know, it's so different from what it once was. And there are so many amazing opportunities for our kids of all abilities to achieve any dream, and being involved and proactive allows that to happen.
Love that. Tell us about the REACH group and the work that you are doing and where our listeners can find out more.
Yes. So the REACH group is an educational advocacy and consulting firm. We are based in the Philadelphia region. So we say if you bleed green, we should be on your IEP team or special ed team. We cover all of the counties, Berks, Bucks, Montgomery, Delco, Chester County, Delaware, and we have advocates in New Jersey too that we can refer you to. We are passionate former educators. My partner and I were both administrators, leaders in our own districts. I am now currently part of the Pennsylvania Department of Education's fellowship program, working to change policy for special education. We just really believe that every family deserves to reach their fullest potential. And with that, we also have the REACH Foundation. So our foundation offers scholarships to our families who might not be able to afford our services. And we are so proud of that. Last year, we awarded over $26,000 to families in need, and we were able to get educational placements for their children, compensatory education funding for their children. So we really know the law. We know how the districts operate. But we're the most empathetic because we're moms. We have lived the system, and we want to provide you with the comfort to know that your new normal, this life, is totally awesome. And your children are going to be fantastic. So you can reach us at thereachgroup.net, schedule a free consultation, and we will be there to support you. And we're very transparent. We'll tell you if you need us or if you don't. Or we'll type up the email that says, this is what you need to send to district. Call us in 3 months when you get that evaluation report, and we'll walk you through it there. But at the end of the day, we're moms, and we want to help moms and dads understand and feel empowered by their rights and the knowledge for their children.
Love it. All right. Last question I have for you. What's your biggest piece of advice for families?
Give yourself grace. Breathe. Just breathe through every meltdown. Breathe through the tears. Laugh at the littlest things. Celebrate the little moments, and don't focus on those outbursts. When our kiddos have them, they have them. I have them. You have them, Martha. We all have a meltdown at some point. Give yourself grace. Find your tribe. Reach out to social media. Find the moms and dads who are just like in your group that help so many moms and dads, Martha. Find your tribe because you're not alone. 1 in 5 families is navigating the special education world. 1 in 5. I have so many friends that I help. You live it. How many other people do you know? Give yourself grace. You're not alone. It feels scary like you are, but you truly are not.
Love it. Dr. Kristin Meyer, thank you so much for joining us on the NICU Today podcast. What an incredible episode filled with so much great advice and information. Really appreciate you being here. I'm grateful our paths crossed.
So am I. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the NICU Today podcast, brought to you by Today is a Good Day. Learn more at todayisagooddday.org.